Are you starting?
I'll start, yeah. But I love that, like, even when we're not doing a stupid thing, you still make me laugh. Wait, what's the official title of this one?
I'm just going to keep this in the edit, by the way.
It's my edit.
Engaging well, then you have to keep it in. Engaging stakeholders, the secret to proving impact. I'm glad we're organised.
Very organised. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Marketing for Learning podcast and episode 2 of our first series on the podcast. Today we are talking about engaging stakeholders and the impact that can have on our projects and L&D as a function. So you're very lucky. You might have realised I've said we a few times. It's both Ashley and I here today.
Boop! Hi! It's my aim in life to make you laugh in the first minute of the podcast every single time.
You did it in the first second of the podcast today. You were just pulling faces at me through the camera. So, stakeholders, it's something we talk about a lot, isn't it, Ash, with our clients, and the impact they can have both positively and negatively to our projects and what we do as a function and how we demonstrate our value in what we do.
So obviously the series is all focused on transformation and L&D, right? How we go from a cost center order taking function that is getting crippled with the amount of requests and work from the business, but a lot of it's not leading to tangible value. Our learning experiences are disorganized, dysfunctional, not targeted at anyone in particular, and then to top it off, we're not doing any good marketing to support any of that. So this series is focused on that kind of journey that we need to go through. Obviously, the first session was with Derek, talking about data, how we can use data to better understand our people, understand our work, and also understand our marketing to improve what it is that we're doing through an iterative feedback loop. And so today we really want to talk about, again, those relationships, those partnerships within the business. It's again, we've talked about it so many times, business partnering, performance consulting, whatever you want to talk about. It boils down to relationships in the organization. And I don't think we have as many valuable relationships with the business as we should. Even though L&D touches every part of the business, really, we don't have very strong relationships with our stakeholders. And I think in some cases we don't even know who our stakeholders are. And so it's really crucial that we align ourselves better to the business. So what I want to focus on in the podcast is really about how we better align to the business and where stakeholder relationships sit within that. So how we can better align to the business through partnerships, through stakeholders, right? And so the starting point for me, the crux of it all is understanding what it is we're trying to achieve, right? So step one in any journey we're doing from a learning perspective should start with understanding our business goals. We should be knowing what we're doing and what its purpose is and how it is going to impact the business. So we want a management course. Okay, why? What are we looking to impact here? So on and so forth. So I think digging into how we understand business goals through stakeholders, through relationships might be a good starting point. And then we can talk a little bit more through some of that as well. So the key things for me are actually being a bit more proactive with how we connect with these people. So for example, we've said it before, right? Don't just have transactional relationships with the business. I need something, I'll go and talk to HR now. Oh, I'd like some data, some people data. I'll go and befriend them now. Yeah, exactly. That doesn't add any value. So really we're talking about being involved in strategic conversations, having a broader view of what's going on in the business and being part of conversations, going where these people are rather than waiting for them to come to you. Do you ever see that happening?
I think when I have this conversation with clients, it comes back to a reluctance and a fear of just getting yourself involved, just pushing yourself out there. And actually at the Learning Network event that we did in November, I was on a panel and a lovely lady called Thembi, she said, don't let that be an option. Be involved. Get yourself involved. Go and have the conversations. And I think the more that L&D we doubt ourselves. So we have this whole narrative about getting a seat at the table and being seen as a business partner. Start acting like it Like, fake it till you make it almost, and get yourself
Sure.
in those conversations. Go and speak to those people. Don't, it's not good enough to be like, oh, well, my manager doesn't know what the business strategy is and I don't want to ask. Like, you should know senior leaders on a first name basis to be like, hey, like, what's going on here? I think part of it, when I've spoken to clients, is that fear of messing up or fear of failure or fear of, I don't know, just making a bit of a wally of yourself, not wanting to go out and find that information. So when we're in a position where we're saying we need to know this, it's very quickly followed, in my experience, from, oh yeah, but nobody tells us it. And again, it's somebody else's problem.
We're quite passive, I think.
We are.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because we're all so passionate about what we do.
But we're like afraid to tread on anybody's toes, aren't we?
And it doesn't make any sense because we're so passionate about what we're delivering to the business that passion is only going to be multiplied if we actually know, this is what the business is trying to achieve. These are the business goals. This is what I'm going to do to help us get there. And this is how it worked. And we can't do this is how it worked. We can't prove our value. We can't get a seat at the table or any of that stuff unless we know what we're trying to achieve in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, if you're an L&D pro and you're curious, like, how do I start aligning with business goals? I've got some tips and some places to start. So the first one, of course, like we said, engaging in those strategic conversations, having more meaningful relationships within the workplace. And that is with a lot of different functions, finance, operations, HR, marketing, whatever. Go and befriend these people and understand what's going on in each of their unique functions. Because as we well know, when we're doing persona work and discovery and audience insights and business insights, sometimes the function that people are in can have a massive impact on their kind of lived experience within the organization. But make sure that you're asking important questions, meaningful questions, not just, hey, Steve, nice to see you, Steve. I don't, Max calls every stuffed animal Steven. That's right. What's his name, Max? Steven. So that's where Steve's come from, obviously. So things like, what are the strategic objectives for the business for this year? What about for 3 years? Do we have these questions? Do we ask these questions? What skills gaps are preventing the business from reaching its goals? And how does leadership envision success? These are like really important questions for us to understand what the narrative is within the business, what your stakeholders are putting stock in and what they think is valuable. Why aren't we aligning to that, right? So we need to have those conversations.
It absolutely exists in businesses as well. You might be sat here listening to this podcast thinking, oh, my business doesn't have a strategic vision. It does. I can guarantee it. Like, we are a business of two. There's two of us here. We have a strategic vision. It'd help if I could say that. Strategic vision.
Don't have Prosecco at 10 a.m. on a Monday, folks. It doesn't do you well.
I wish I'd had Prosecco at 10 a.m. on a Monday. But no, like, it does exist. You've just got to ask the right questions and go to the right people. And sometimes the messages can try to be simplified as they come down and they tell you what they think you should know. But as an L&D professional, if you're then answering the right questions about what you actually do need to know, about where we're trying to get to in the next 1, 2, 3 years, that's when you're going to start getting the reputation of somebody that A, cares, and B, is trying to help move that needle, trying to push the business forward because you're focused on that strategic vision.
That's it. You're asking the right questions and understanding how can my function add value and impact the business in a positive way. Having those strategic conversations, but there's also lots of other things, right? There's annual reports, there's business plans, there's a lot of desk research that you can do as well. That doesn't entail speaking directly to people, but getting more insights into the business and what it's trying to accomplish and what it has done thus far.
Don't overlook those, like, in big organisations and even mid-sized organisations, you have your town hall meetings, you have those presentations. And I know for a fact, so many L&Ders are like, oh, I'd rather actually just be doing the job. Listen in those meetings. Like, they are giving you an insight into what's going on in the business. Yeah, I know, sometimes they're really long and drab and boring. But, like, that's when you're getting that key information that you need and you're getting those insights.
Or like, there's oftentimes like board presentation decks that get put together in bigger organizations. I don't know if you've ever had to make a slide for marketing or whatever. L&D will sometimes get a slide in the board deck. ask to see the whole deck. Why not? Can I see it once it's done? Because I'd be really interested to understand where what I'm doing plays a role in everything else. And also just getting an understanding of that market and the business culture and what's actually happening. Finally, I think, again, talking to other people, right? Talking directly to employees, understanding what is going on with them. Speaking to line managers, we've talked again before, so like managers are just the biggest blocker to learning. If they're not engaged, they don't understand. And what I often find when I've done discovery is there's a big crevasse in managers' understanding of what's available from a learning perspective in order to enable their own teams. And they're the ones having the one-to-ones. They're the ones having the PDP conversations and all of that. Wouldn't it be great if they were enabled and empowered with the knowledge they need to be able to have more sophisticated conversations about learning and diagnose what someone might need on that kind of one-on-one level that we can't accomplish with the tools and technology that we have?
This is so perfectly timed because just the other day I had a discovery session and I touched on every element of that. Firstly, I asked people in the discovery session, did they feel their managers were supportive in their personal development? It was a 50-50 split. 50% said yep, 50% said no. A few of them did ask me if they could have a middle ground, and I was mean and said no.
That was a yes or no question, was it?
Yeah.
Hey, we've got to have data.
Exactly. So in that call as well, though, we had people not realising what was available to them. And those people that didn't realise it was available were in managers or team leaders positions. So if they're not aware of what's available, they can't tell their team what's available because they're unaware.
I think what we really just want to be understanding is how is success measured in the business, right? Not how we measure success, because for the most part, we don't. But if we do, it's the atypical pants measurements that we've already again talked about at length, and that, I mean, Derek destroyed in the last podcast. We need to be thinking, how do we translate a learning need into a business solution, right? I'm going to quote myself on that. It's quite good. And I think that's what we want to be doing as a starting point, right? Is really understanding those business goals is crucial. And then, the next part of building on that, again, is, I just alluded to it, that business partnering and performance consulting piece, right? So again, if we want to make that shift from order taker to strategic partner, this is something that you kind of alluded to there, is when people at the moment, lots of learning functions get stakeholders, SMEs within the business, head of sales, I need a training on X, Y, and Z. I need a 45-minute e-learning module. Can you make it for me? And we don't say no. We don't, because we don't really know. Like, if going back to our first point around aligning to business goals, if we have a very clear strategy in place to say, right, this is what we're trying to achieve. When we do our management course, we're looking at minimizing employee attrition through manager empowerment, blah, 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 by 10% this year, whatever it might be. That's such a clear objective. Whereas if Stephen comes and asks for his sales training, we don't ask any questions. We feel like we're in this transactional relationship. And if we really want to become a more consultative partner and a strategic partner to the business, then we have to act like it. Like you were saying, we need to ask those questions. We need to be asking, what is the problem? So again, diagnosing before we prescribe learning, really important. What are we trying to achieve? What business challenge are you trying to solve? Do
you think as well, to an extent, it comes back to, it's something I spoke to Sam Goodman about. I can't remember how long ago I did that podcast, but it's on our podcast. And he said that there was it was around that time. There was an element of his function that he accepted was not an L&D challenge. It was not his job to be doing all of the training and all of the L&D within the business. He was enabling people to do it more effectively themselves. So when it was a salesperson saying, I need a 40-minute course on this, he'd be like, oh, do you really need that? And would act more as the consultant to say, okay, well, if this is what you need, this is what you can go and do. If this is what you need, this is what I can do. And I think over the years, as a profession, we've become trainers almost, and people say, hey, look, I need training. I'm going to go to the training team and they're going to give me some sort of training. And actually, in learning and development, there's nothing saying it has to be an e-learning course. There's nothing saying it has to be a course or a program. It could be a PDF. It could be a one-pager. It could be any number of things. It could be a YouTube video. There are other ways to help people learn and develop. And I think it requires a bit of a mindset shift within L&D professionals to realise I don't have to say yes. If somebody comes to me and says, can you do this? No is an answer. You can be a bit more polite. You can say, no, but I can help you here. But you can say no. We are professionals. We are experts in learning and development. Other people aren't. And I think it's another thing that L&D can learn from marketing, because how many times have we had to bat off people that think they know how to do marketing better than we do? Like, it's something that marketing have had for donkey's years.
I think the crux of that, though, is having a strategy, right? So, like, I think it's having something tangible to justify the pushback. And that's, I think, what we lack in many cases is, you know, you feel belligerent just saying no. But if you have a strategy that's aligned to business goals, then that's a really clear direction of travel. And it's very easy to say, well, actually, what you're asking me to do doesn't make any sense in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. That to me is the big difference, and really enables you to say now, empowers you to say no. But I think as well, things like, okay, so a training needs analysis. So we need training. That's the starting point, isn't it? So we're already starting to look at a problem by saying, well, training's the solution. What kind of training does it need to be? I think, again, we need to zoom out a little bit and look at something like a performance needs analysis, right? So what is the crux? What's the root cause of a performance issue? So if, I don't know, people at work are really struggling with being on time, I don't know, let's just say for argument's sake, what is really causing that problem? Rather, is it their travel? Is it their lack of desire to be at work? Whatever it might be. But we need to ask the right questions again, you know, instead of just saying, oh, well, their manager said we need to do a course on being on time. Well, let's actually look at that. You know, let's ask these important questions. Let's identify root causes. And again, does any sort of training that we're going to create work with outlining or solving a business problem? Yeah. You know,
I think I mentioned to you the other day that I was listening to a very old podcast with David James and Nick Shackleton-Jones. And Nick said that a trainer needs analysis, essentially, I'm paraphrasing, he might not have said it this abruptly, is as useful as a marshmallow needs analysis. Because you ask people, how many marshmallows do you need? They will give you an answer. But you're creating a problem that they don't actually need a solution to, because you're going in with the solution of training or marshmallows in that example. And I absolutely agree that performance needs analysis makes so much more sense, because what is it that's going to help? Again, with the performance, you're looking at the individual and thinking, what can they do that's going to help the business achieve its goals, and what can I do to help that person achieve the business goals? We're always coming back to that business goals, business strategy, business purpose.
Yeah, because you're speaking the language of the business there, right? Like, we are there to serve the business, and that is the truth of the matter. Like, I think learning has become this kind of nice, fluffy thing somehow. And I'm not saying that's not the case, but we are struggling to link our value with anything tangible, because we have been building products at the request of other people within the business who aren't asking for stuff because it's solving a business problem. It's solving their problem. And, you know, and I think that's really crucial. And, you know, I like what you said about Sam, because there's a client of mine who you also did some work on when I went on mat leave. And when I spoke to their sales team in particular, these people were out and about a lot. They were working like with building partnerships and very much on the phone all the time, very commercially led function. And what they were finding from a learning perspective is a lot of their managers, and they do a lot of like peer sharing, like, hey, Steve did this, Steven. And Steve's going to then share with the team what he did and how that's helped him, I don't know, be more productive, be quicker, whatever, you know, whatever's important to that sales team. You know, I had to create a whole persona just on this type of person, because they were with such a unique, complex situation that they were in. But they made a lot of their own learning, because, you know, I think in L&D, we want to like control everything. Like well, they can't be producing learning because we do that. That's our job. Yeah. No. Our job is to enable our employees to perform at their best. And if that requires knowledge acquisition or new skills or changes in behavior, great. But we can also be a very valuable resource to SMEs within the business to create stuff that is really, really applicable to the boots on the ground. And they know what they're talking about more than we do because we're not doing that job. So like to Sam's point, we can also work really closely with other SMEs, other people within the business and co-create stuff, enable them to create stuff. What do you need? Yeah, we can host it on the LMS, or you can just share it, or what do you need? You can do a talking head for a few minutes. That might be enough, Again, if it goes back to that performance need analysis, you can define that. And imagine having a suite of stakeholders that want to help you by producing learning that helps them and their teams.
Yeah, and by creating that learning that is just going to work better, you're then going to engage more stakeholders. It's like a knock-on effect. We're going to have more stakeholders going, what are they doing over there? I want to get involved. And our learners are our stakeholders too. They'll be more engaged. They'll be wanting to get involved because it's more relevant and applicable. That discovery session that I did a few days ago, somebody said they rolled out a program that was for everybody, and it was just so relevant to my role, and it was they were just not interested. That's why we need to be making sure that us sitting in L&D, we can't know everything. That's not our job to be an expert on every single topic that needs to be trained or focused on within the business. That's not our job. Our job is to help with the learning process. Because somebody who was detached from the role, so I can say it was a warehouse-based role, had tried to create this learning with little understanding of what it's like on the floor, it ended up failing. And then you've got a disengaged audience. So just putting this legwork in up front and actually doing this research makes such a big impact on every element of the L&D function. Yeah, it can't be overlooked. We need to start doing this proper research and align ourselves to the business goals.
Yeah, I mean, look, it has been overlooked for decades. As long as and look at where it's gotten us. We cannot continue to create learning products and experiences with no understanding of whether that is relevant for the recipient or the business that we serve. Is incredibly problematic. So unless we're really collaborating with the business and acting in a much more consultative manner in terms of deepening our understanding of what it is that the business is trying to achieve, what direction of travel it's going in, and indeed how we can enable that, that's where we're getting stuck, because we are then building learning products blindly. We're throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. And, it's inherently problematic because there's massive saturation. People don't want what's available to them if they know it's available to them. And we don't really know how that links back to anything to prove real value. And so we just get caught in this endless cycle of trying to do more with less, and the volume over value thing has gotten really out of control in L&D. We've got 5,000 courses, so that everything they could ever need.
Must be great. Yeah. I've also just had a bit of a thought there while you were talking, Ash. How much of this problem do you think comes back with, I'm going to be bold and just say it, L&D's obsession with what other L&D teams are doing? Whenever I talk to L&D professionals, it's oh yeah, but I saw that this organisation is doing this, or I saw on LinkedIn that so-and-so is doing that. I want to do that. But they're not actually looking inwardly into their market, which is their business, their audience, their stakeholders, and saying, what do these people need? We're seeing, it's almost that shiny object thing that we were talking about with learning platforms and things that we want, technology, that's going to solve my problems. We're almost doing that with, this company, they've launched a whole Gen AI project. We need to launch a Gen AI project. But do you? Does that align to your business goals? And I think absolutely we need to get inspiration from other people. We need to be in these networking events. That's why I really like networking. I like the big conferences that go on. We need to hear what other people are doing to be inspired and push our own functions forward. But we need to not be obsessed with it, because what's working for one company won't work for you and vice versa. It needs to be based on your goals and your business. And I think actually some of our problems do come back to shiny object syndrome. And I heard one person say one thing on a podcast or on a LinkedIn profile, and I want to copy it, rather than actually aligning with, does that work for my business?
Yeah, I think my response is twofold. One is that our industry is very vendor-led. And the vendor agenda tends to fuel the innovations in our industry, and therefore we are chasing technology because the industry primarily revolves around technology, because that's what most of the vendors provide, and same with course libraries, so on and so forth. So I think that some of this is getting caught up in the hype of marketing, and following the vendor agenda.
I love that, by the way. Vendor agenda. It's my new favourite phrase.
It's a bit of a tongue twister.
Yeah.
But I think the converse of that is, it's for example, if you said to me, I want to replicate your success on LinkedIn, well, how do I do that? And I could tell you what I do with my audience and what I know about my audience and the types of things that I tend to get better engagement with, so on and so forth. I could give you that in a prescriptive model, and you could execute it on your LinkedIn, not your learning platform. That would be weird, and have very little success. And that's because your audience is different to mine. And the same thing applies to if you're trying to replicate what other learning functions have done to success in their organizations. I would also ask what success looks like. Again, going back to business goals, is it successful? Oh, they had lots of engagement. Cool. Well, did anything change? But I think that that's mainly the other problem, is that we don't take the time to, again, understand our own audiences, and we can't, and that's why technology fails. That's why strategies fail, because we don't have the understanding of the business, and we don't have the understanding of our audiences. So we're just blindly creating, and it's just wildly unsuccessful as a consequence. I can't think of any other business model or product chain or anything of the sort that would have this sort of approach.
No, I was just thinking from a marketing perspective, again, like, if you think of like two really distinct brands, I don't know, like, I'm trying to think of a not funny, serious brand, and I'm really struggling because all my favourite brands are a bit quirky. But imagine like something really serious, like, I don't know, a hospital advertising in the funny, sarcastic way that like Specsavers does. It just wouldn't add up. The audience are different. The market's different. A marketer would never look and go, I just want to replicate that. It needs to be aligned to your brand and who you are as an individual. And we don't do that enough in L&D. We don't look at who our audience is. And it all comes back to the fact we actually don't spend the time speaking to our audiences. We don't do that research, and that needs to change.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think there's plenty of marketers who are like, ooh, I'd love to create a viral post, like the Stanley Cup one. Do you remember that?
Yep.
And yeah, so the lady left her car caught on fire. She left a Stanley Cup in her car. She did a TikTok about the fact that there was still ice in her Stanley Cup, even though the car had been on fire. And so Stanley Cup bought her a new car, blah, 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 blah. That went viral as hell. And I see Stanley Cups everywhere now. There's replicas of Stanley Cups, all that. So clearly a good marketing campaign, but we couldn't replicate that in the same way. So like,
what are we going to do? Set an LMS on fire in a car? Like,
I mean, I'll happily set some LMSs on fire, but maybe for different reasons. I don't know. So yeah, so I think when you say it out loud, what we're saying here shouldn't be a surprise. You need to talk to the business. You need to speak to people, have long-standing relationships, build relationships outside of your needs, and you need to check in with these people regularly. You need to be talking to your employees. You need to be talking to managers. This is really important stuff, and you need to be asking questions of the business, of your C-suite, of senior decision makers, budget holders, really, the ones who are going to dictate whether you make more money, get more money for your function next year, or lose half your headcount. Those are the people that you need to say, well, what does success for the business look like to you? Right, well, what does that mean? And it's up to you to translate that into a learning context. But we should be starting first and foremost with those business goals, and then looking at our learning ecosystem, our learning offering, and assessing, is there gaps in what we have here? Is there things that we do need to create to help us attain those goals? Or is it a curation process? Again, I think we don't need to put everything in the bin, throw the baby out with the bathwater. In my opinion, it's a curation process and a journey mapping process. What do people need? What are we trying to achieve as a business? And then how do we make that interesting for them from a marketing perspective? So I really think that if we want to shift from being that transactional learning provider, cost center, to being a trusted business partner, it has to start with those business goals and being more consultative. So I'd encourage every single person listening to start having those strategic conversations with stakeholders. You know, there's no time like the present to start that conversation.
Nothing bad's going to happen as well if you
No,
do it.
they're all just nice people, probably.
Yeah. And like they're all human beings as well. I think a lot as well. I said earlier about like L&D just not having the guts to go and have these conversations. I think some of that comes back to like that senior management fear almost. Like they're big and important and they're just humans. Just talk to them.
They probably have kids that
poop
on the walls, and you know, like they're just human beings, and like when you really get past that, I do understand it can be intimidating.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was so victim of it when I was in bigger organisations. I was terrified of the C-suite, and then bit the bullet and actually realised they were all just human beings that I could talk to and could have those conversations with. And I actually owe some of my career to biting that bullet and talking to the people and getting myself out there. So you just need to go for it. There's no magical solution we can give apart from talk to people.
Yeah. And that's it. So, you know, if I'm going to say what's the one thing that our listeners could do this week to better engage their stakeholders, have conversations, talk to someone you've never spoken to in the business, someone who maybe has more of a seniority in your business. Build in regular engagements, regular touch points. Diagnose before prescribing, but make sure that you're really asking those right questions and trying to understand what business challenges are trying to be solved through a learning, whatever that is, right?
I think if I was answering that one thing, give yourself 7 days. Find out what the business strategy is. I can guarantee, like you said, Ash, there's going to be a slide deck out there somewhere that is an overview of where the business wants to go. If you're in a really big organisation, I bet Google can help you find it. I bet it's online somewhere. I bet it's been published in the press. Like, find out what that goal is and then remember it. Then base everything you're doing around that. If you're thinking, actually, this isn't going to help us hit our learning goal, which helps the business hit their goal, why am I doing it? It gives you that leg to stand on, really, when, like you said, when you're pushing back, you know, hey, I'm doing this for a reason, but you can't do that. So I'm going to set you all a challenge for the next 7 days, find out what the business strategy actually is.
And as well, I think a lot of people would be surprised to understand what it is that their business is trying to achieve, right? Because it's an interesting economic climate at the moment. And, you know, a lot of thought goes into what direction of travel these businesses are going in, depending on what's going on in the economy, but also what, you know, are they trying to get traded public? Are they wanting to do an IPO? Are they looking for acquisition? Are they wanting to merger with somebody? Like, all of this has an impact on the workforce, and things that you should certainly be aware of from a climate perspective and a culture perspective. You know, acquisitions, gosh, you're suddenly injected with, 10,000 new people, and that's going to change the culture. This is stuff we need to be aware of,
and
because
I think
it impacts
as well,
what we do.
There'll be many people listening to this. Again, over the weekend, there's been more announcements in the UK about some of the biggest chains here making job cuts and things like that, changing like part of their product offering. You also need to be aware of that. You need to be aware of where that's coming from, why that's happening, because regardless of whether it's headcount cuts or things like that, it all adds more pressure onto your audience. So some of them might end up doing a job of 2 people rather than 1. That adds more pressure. They might need new training, they might need new development opportunities. Somebody in the call that I had the other day, the discovery call, was saying, well, actually, we're taking on more of a HR and L&D consultant role as team leaders, but I don't know what I'm looking for. So, like, can somebody train me to do that bit of my job? Because I can't do it. I don't know it.
This is what I was saying about managers, right?
Yeah. So, a lot of what's going on, and I don't want to add more to L&D's plate because I know everyone's feeling really overworked and under pressure at the moment, but it's going to continue. People are going to want more from us. So we need to be on the ball and know what's coming and be ready for, okay, this is where the business wants to get to. These are the eventual outcomes. We need to be prepared for it, and we can't be prepared if we don't know about it.
Yeah. And look, if we're going to be under more pressure, more scrutiny, then all the more reason to do this stuff. Because if we're going to be under more pressure, I guarantee once you understand the British business strategy, you'll be able to be very clear on what it is you're trying to do as a learning function. You know, the reason we're running around like headless chickens is because we are literally servicing on a micro level You know, we need this, go make it. Well, okay, that's really problematic because we only have a certain amount of manpower and woman power. That's going to get exhausted really quickly. So again, if we can be more strategic with the work that we are doing, then, you know, we can be very, very clear on, okay, these are the clear outputs from L&D this year, but then we're also going to focus on enabling SMEs and managers, and here's how our marketing campaigns are going to help support that piece, so on and so forth. If we want to be less overworked, then we've got to cut the fat too, and we've got to have an ability to be boundaried with our own function and our own resource and our own budgets, and say that is not worthy of our time, but here is why. Not just no. You know, that's very obtuse and not helpful to anybody. What we want is that consultative approach. Like, Sam, I can't do that for you. Here's what I can do, but I can also help you in X, Y, and Z. Or we have, you know, lots of people have business partners for this exact same reason. There's a lot of L&D business partners. Leverage those people, right? Like, again, don't just have them be the ones who are sitting there, you know, Europe needs this or EMEA needs this or whatever. Like, cool, but that doesn't align with what we're trying to achieve. I've spoken to Stephen, our CEO, as a theme, and he, you know, it's very clear what we're doing, and he's signed off on the strategy, and so anything that deviates from that isn't being focused on. You know, there's lots of stuff on the LMS if you want to go and find things, but as a business function, we are being more strategic, and therefore we are focusing on X, Y, and Z. You know, it's not complicated. It is time consuming. And I think that, you know, when we're so overworked and busy, it's difficult to prioritize all of this because it feels like a nothing. It feels like, well, what am I doing all this for? This isn't going to lead to anything. But we need to do that research. We need to do that desk research. Like, even when you were talking about going and finding the business strategy, go and have a look on Glassdoor. What are people saying about your business? Like, why are people leaving? So on and so forth, right? There's tons of research that's out there for us to get our hands on. So that is your task for this week. Find your business strategy, understand what your business is trying to achieve, and start to think more about how that translates into a learning strategy.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been a fun to that. Yeah, this has been a fun episode. As you can see, we're hyper-organised. Took us a while to get into it, but I think we're there now.
I'm sticking with what you said, never recording a podcast on a Monday morning again. It's not right for us. We know our limits now.
We do. We know where we are. That is what it is. Well, it's always lovely to see your face. I'm actually going to hop off now and go on another intro for an upcoming podcast guest.
Ooh.
So I will see you. I will see you later, taters.
We will see you on the next episode of the Marketing for
Yeah, one more thing as well. Well, just one more thing. That we've got the strategic marketing courses open now. So if anybody's interested in actually learning how to do some of the stuff that we talk about in this series, our masterclass, which is now has a new skin as the strategic marketing for L&D course. That's next cohort's March 5th, isn't it? So it's closing soon. So if you want to come, we're only doing one more this year in September. So we're not doing loads this year. So yeah. That's that. So
get your seats now. Sign up,
we'll put the link in the show notes. Yeah.
We're so great at promoting ourselves, aren't we, Ashley?
I'll tell you what,
that's
not convinced anybody. Did you just use my name as a verb?
I called you Ashley. Yeah, I didn't like it.
I see what you mean.
No.
No. Don't like it.
No.
All right.
Bye,
Thanks for your time, as always. See you later.
Bye.
Bye, Felicia.